My name is Kyle Irvin. I'm the Public Safety Information Officer for the City of Charlottesville, and I want to welcome you to today's press conference on the Market Street Park Administrative Investigation. As some of you may know, we received concerns from our community members at the public comment section of a previous City Council meeting that was held on September 18th. We took these concerns very seriously, and as a result, we opened up an administrative investigation into the matter. So today, we'll be hearing from Police Chief Michael Kachis as he discussed the findings of the investigation. We'll be showing body-worn camera footage of the events that transpired, and afterwards, we will be holding a brief Q&A section for the media only. All right, Chief.
Thank you, Kyle. And first of all, thank you everybody for being here. I really appreciate it on this very important matter. I do want to introduce who's up here with me. To my left is Captain Larry Jones. He's the captain in our Patrol Bureau. Assistant Chief Daniel Meehan. He's the Assistant Chief over Patrol Operations and Criminal Investigations. I have Captain Robert Haney. He is the captain over our Professional Standards Bureau. I have Sergeant Chris Huber, who is a sergeant in Internal Affairs, and Lieutenant Greg Wade, who is the lieutenant over Professional Standards, soon to be in patrol. So excited about that, right? Sure. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to read prepared remarks. We'll show the video, and then I'll go ahead and take some questions. So on September 18th, while at the Charlottesville City Council meeting, several disgusting and disturbing allegations were made about Charlottesville police officers and their actions while dealing with unhoused individuals. Allegations related to two specific interactions. One was on September 12th, and the other occurred on September 16th. Both interactions involved officers being dispatched to Market Street Park after someone had called and complained about people sleeping in the park and pitching tents. On both occasions, the complainant who called asked that the officers call them and report what actions they took at their conclusion. One of the allegations that was made during the meeting was that our officers have been, and I quote, targeting black, unhoused individuals with violence. Another allegation was that a Charlottesville police officer assaulted an unhoused individual by kicking him while on the ground. I've heard several descriptions of this event, such as the officer was, quote, kicking him like a football, end quote, and kicking him in his chest, end quote. Allegations were also made that only black, unhoused individuals have been asked to leave the park, but the white individuals were not. As I said earlier, the alleged allegations occurred on September 12th and September 16th, but no complaint has ever been made to the police department or the PCOB. The only complaint made about either one of these incidents was during public comment during the Monday night council meeting. Once the allegations were made, I contacted Commonwealth Attorney Joe Platania to review the body-worn camera footage to ensure any investigation conducted be done so within the appropriate venue. The allegation of an assault must be referred to the Commonwealth Attorney as it's a crime. Mr. Platania and his assistant reviewed the footage and immediately determined that the contact with the individual in question was incidental to the lawful discharge of the officer's duties, reasonable under the law, and did not rise to the level of battery. At this point, I ordered an administrative investigation into this matter and later asked the executive director of the PCOB, Inez Gonzalez, to review it. Here are the facts. On September 12th, at approximately 10:15 p.m., officers were dispatched to Market Street Park after receiving a complaint that people had pitched tents and that would likely be in the park after the park had closed. Officers arrived and found several tents that had been set up. Officers advised those in the park that the park closed in a few minutes and that they would need to pack up their belongings once the park closed. While waiting for the items to be packed up, one individual exited a tent and set up a chair in the walkway. The individual sat in the chair and stated, quote, "You're about to make an arrest tonight," end quote. After the officer advised him that he would need to leave the park at 11 p.m., just like they advised everyone else in the park, he insisted that the officer arrest him. The individual stated several times that he was refusing to leave the park and the officers would need to arrest him. After 11 p.m., when the park closed, the officer advised the individual that he could avoid being arrested if he would just leave the park like everyone else was. The individual refused to leave the park at that time. He was arrested without incident. It should be noted that along with being arrested for trespassing, an outstanding felony warrant for probation violation was also served. On September 16th, at approximately 11:09 p.m., officers were dispatched to Market Street Park in reference to several individuals sleeping in the park past the park's closing time. The individual who made the complaint, again, requested that officers call them back to report what actions they had taken. Officers arrived at the park and spoke with several individuals who were sleeping on the ground and inside tents. It should be noted that these individuals were white, black, and Latino. Officers approached each of them and made them aware of the park being closed and that they would need to be given some time to collect their belongings and leave the park. At one point, officers approached an individual where it is alleged that an officer had assaulted him by kicking him. The officers approached and asked him to wake up, which he did. The officers told him the park is closed and that he needed to pack up his stuff and leave. The officers told him they would give him some time to pack up his belongings and then leave. The officers walked away and spoke with two other individuals sitting on a bench and advised them of the same thing they've told to everyone else in the park. The officers then, while walking back towards the tents, noticed that the man they had just spoken to went back to sleep, this time with a blanket over his head, arms, and hands. Officers attempted to wake him up again, but received no response. At this point, one of the officers touched the heel of the person's foot with his own foot to wake him up. He woke up, he eventually packed his stuff, and left the park. After reviewing this entire investigation, it has been determined that the allegations that our officers, quote, have been targeting black unhoused individuals with violence, and that, quote, officers have only been asking black unhoused individuals to leave the park are unfounded and simply did not occur. It has been said many times, and I've said this many times, that few police departments in this country don't have room to do a little better, and that includes us. Responding to calls involving the unhoused are complex and multifaceted. As such, I have ordered the review of our training protocols as they relate to the handling of calls for service involving the unhoused. We have recently restructured our department. One of the restructuring that I made was to place our training and recruitment section under our professional standards and internal affairs division. More often than not, complaints may not rise to a specific policy violation, but training opportunities such as this, or being familiar with the complexities of people who are experiencing homelessness, should become a regular part of our training curriculum, and it will. Now let me briefly talk about dignity and respect, specifically for our unhoused. While reviewing the footage, outside of the specific incident, because I have the fortune of being able to watch the wonderful work my officers do each and every day while out there in very difficult circumstances. And so I got to listen to a conversation between two of the officers while they were standing around while people were packing up the stuff to leave a park where they had nowhere to go. And one of the quotes I heard from one of my officers, they said, "If I ever won the lottery, I'd buy a place where the homeless can go," end quote. The officers spoke of the frustration of having to send people on their way with nowhere to go. Our officers are human beings, just like the folks in that park. And their frustration with the systems and programs that continue to fail these communities was palpable, and I share their frustration. Police officers are often the easy target of those who are frustrated with certain situations. I get that. But it's not okay to exaggerate and fabricate events in an attempt to bring attention to such a complex and important issue like the unhoused. With that, we're going to show the two videos. The first is one of September 12th, and the second one will be September 16th, and then we'll take some questions.
We don't got nowhere to go, nowhere at all. Everywhere we have been, y'all done ran us all.
Have you not tried the Salvation Army?
Man, are you talking about the Salvation Army? You think I'd be right here if I could get in the Salvation Army?
What
We're
is,
not here to do no motherfucking negotiating. These are attorneys. You're gonna lock me up right now because I ain't going nowhere, and the only way I'm going somewhere is if you lock me up. I'm going to be heard one way or another.
sure, I get that. And if it comes to that, we absolutely will. What I'm asking you
Yeah, well,
is,
you don't have to have no, we don't have to have no discussion about it because you're going to.
so are you telling me you're refusing to
I'm
leave?
telling you, I'm not going anywhere.
You have 1 minute.
I don't have any minutes. You know already.
Well, once it's 11 o'clock, the park is officially closed. You're going to be arrested for trespassing if you're still refusing to leave.
Yes, sir. Understood. Completely understood. For trespassing. They're gonna lock me up for trespassing.
Well, if you agreed to leave, I wouldn't be doing that. But you're making it pretty clear that you're not going to be doing
No, I'm
that.
definitely not going nowhere. I'm definitely not going nowhere. You're gonna lock me up in about 30 seconds, 35 seconds or more.
If you refuse to leave, that's accurate.
It's trespassing.
Correct.
What are you gonna do? Take me to jail?
Yes.
I'm going to jail. Guess what's gonna happen?
What's going to happen?
I'm gonna be locked up for some time.
Well, you can avoid that if you get
I
yourself ready
don't
and you
give a
leave.
fuck about going to no jail. All these people out here are gonna witness what just happened tonight, and they're gonna be my voice when I'm behind bars.
Gotcha. All right, it's 11 o'clock. You refusing to leave?
You heard me before you even asked the question.
All right. What's your name, man? Do you have an ID on you or anything?
This is fine. No, come again. So,
That's it. Arrested without incident, he was taken down to booking where a felony probation violation was also served on him. Next video.
This is dated September 16th.
Ma'am, or sir, your name. Y'all can't, I guess a nice night, and you might not have anywhere else to go, but y'all can't be sleeping in the park, okay? Okay, so I need you guys to pack everything up and kind of get headed on your way, okay? Okay, I'll give you a little bit of time to get that done. Police department, can you unzip the tent front? Okay, sir? Is there anybody else in there with you?
no.
Okay, so I get you might not have anywhere else to go, but the park closes at 11, nobody can be sleeping here, and you can't really be setting up a tent either. I'll give you a little bit of time to pack up your stuff,
Yes, ma'am.
but you'll have to head somewhere else, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, can you sit up and look at me while I'm talking to you? Okay, well, sir, like I told everybody else, the park closes at 11. I'm not sure if you have anywhere else to go, but unfortunately you can't be sleeping here, and you can't especially set up this tent. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a little bit of time to get your stuff up and start heading out, but you have to go, okay? Okay. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Hello. The park closes at 11, so nobody can actually be over here. And so I need you guys to clear out the area. Okay, thank you. I'll give you guys a little bit of time, but I know you guys don't have to pack up as much, but we have to start making our way out of it. Sir, I need you to start packing your stuff up because you have to leave the park.
Wake up. Take me again. Take the shit off. Take me again.
Sir, we're giving you a chance.
Alright, take me again, sir. And I know there's shit. And see if it don't be nice. Take me again. She's gonna go back to sleep. That's fast and thick.
That's it. With that, I'll take questions. Who's first? Media first. I will, hold on. Let me do the media first. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The gentleman, thanks Chief, the gentleman who was sleeping in the tent at the end, he had the blanket over his face.
Yeah.
How was he eventually able to leave the park? How'd you?
He packed up his stuff and left.
Okay. Because how do we know that there wasn't a separate incident later on where
There wasn't.
that's what footage shows?
Yeah.
Additionally, the police there seem to have some remorse, or they feel a certain way. I realize you don't have anywhere else to go, but you have to leave. So with that said, are you happy with the city manager's decision to eliminate the curfew so they don't know to enforce it?
So the city manager spoke with me before making that decision. And we talked it out, and I asked the city manager if the decision was going to be made to make that decision that he do two things. One, that the message be clear to our rank and file, so we're not putting ourselves in a situation where it's just a really difficult situation. The other is that we communicate that to the public, so the community knows that when they call us, why we're not responding. Because you see, we haven't been just proactively, randomly going to the parks every night to say, hey, who's homeless, someone in the park. We've been going because we've been called there. Since July, we have had 266 calls for service in and around the park. And so we have been called there. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my answer to your question.
Just to clarify,
Go ahead.
I think we all know you can't please all of the people all of the time. If someone were to see this video and think that that officer was rude in the way he kicked that man's foot, what would your answer be to them?
I think, well, clearly that was not what was depicted at the city council meeting or the statements that have been made, right? But we did a full internal investigation into this. And so, I think it's clear that, some officers, their tone is much better than others. And that's clearly something we focus on within our police department. We recently had our entire agency, not just sworn staff, professional staff, go through procedural justice training. We had an instructor come out from California, come to the police department, and train our entire staff over a week. And so we're still identifying ways to do just that. I'll give you another example. We're about to pilot a program called Guardian Score. It's the card, correct? So think about this scenario. If officers were there, they would then give them a card. That person would be able to rate their interaction with their officer. And they're rating them based on, did the officer explain why the encounter happened, next steps, stuff like that. And the idea is to really focus on relational policing and how do we measure that. And so we're in the process of rolling that out. The pilot is, when are we looking at the pilot?
Mid-October.
Mid-October. And so, we're already being proactive and taking those steps.
Have you had any interaction with the person who made the complaint at the city council meeting?
No, they never came to the police department to make a complaint.
So the people who say that they saw one of your officers kick this guy while he was sleeping, they just made it up.
I don't know. I don't know if they just made it up. I don't know where they got that from.
You said earlier that you're going to be doing some training for how police deal specifically with the unhoused.
With the unhoused, correct, yes.
Yeah, what's that look like?
Well, so I don't know yet, but there's got to be something, because look, these are complex. Think about this for a second. Someone who is unhoused and is used to sleeping outside, when they wake up, they're probably going to be hypervigilant because it's dangerous. And so it's different as if, you were just waking up your partner or someone at your house. You know what I mean? It's a different situation. And so there's a lot of complexities like that when you're working with folks and responding to calls for service and involved with folks who are unhoused. And so we're going to try to identify some training and push that out.
So maybe more of a question for city council, but having the video out now and all the investigation wrapped up, going forward, what do you think will happen with curfew?
That's a decision that was made above me, and I'm sure any decision would be made above me. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm confused because it looks like he kicked him.
Okay. Sir, what's your question?
I mean, maybe I'm the only one that's confused.
Okay.
And my thought is, if that was your dog, you can kick your dog. So he kicked him.
Okay.
He put his foot on him. You have a nightstick and you have your hand. You don't need to kick nobody. He was kicked. But I don't expect y'all to say that it was a kick, even though it probably was a gentle kick.
Okay.
But he still put his foot on him.
I appreciate your comment, ma'am. I do. Thank you. Sir?
And, I was one of the persons who spoke on city council and said, but it was brought to my attention. I didn't physically do, because we, like activists in the neighborhood for homeless. I didn't take, this is what they was brought to our attention. So it wasn't like that we went and told a lie. This is what this man had. Now, what I see, I'm glad I got to see the video and we draw opinions from that. So you say you have training in place to relieve stuff like that. But it wasn't like we just came in pretty hard bashing you. This is what they came to us saying.
I appreciate that, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Sir?
Nobody understands what you folks go through on a daily basis dealing with various elements in the city. I challenge anybody to spend some time with you to see what's really like out there. I also thank you for your attempts to enforce the law here in Charlottesville to keep all of its citizens safe.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
In light of, an example of, as was my suspicion, what would happen, and it seems to happen in all these encampments, is that violence and drugs occurs. There's been nothing spoken by anybody else in regards to the alleged stabbing that occurred at Market Street Park, which verifies my concerns and fears that this is going to breed more criminality. These aren't people that got kicked out of the apartment with their family, and I'm not saying that they don't deserve help. They certainly do. The city is going to get on the stick and not call it a long-distance solution. It's got to be taken care of quickly so that all these people who have a challenge in their lives can be taken care of. So my question is, in regards to the stabbing that occurred, where somebody was nearly killed, does that not create a precedent for shutting this park down and eliminating this crime that's in the downtown retail and residential area of Charlottesville?
So let me just clarify one thing. The crime, the stabbing you're talking about is reported to have occurred at or around Market Street Park, right? So in that immediate area. I get your point. Yes, sir. And so all I can tell you is that we are going to do everything in our power to make sure people are safe, whether you're unhoused or whether you have a house. And so that's our job to do so. Those folks who are up there in that park deserve every right to live in peace and tranquility as anybody else in this room, and we'll ensure we do just that. Thank you.
You said you were called 200
266 times. And I want to say since July, or I think it was July, yeah.
What's usually the nature of those calls?
Mostly disorderly conduct.
Can you speak more specifically?
It depends. So we'll get a disorderly call, someone being loud, or an argument, somebody fighting, something like that. We'll get there. It just depends on what we find. And that's how it's classified, is what they find.
Can I ask another real quick question?
Sure.
After people are arrested and taken in after a trespass like that, are they connected with any kind of resources or anything that might prevent that from happening again?
They should be. So in this case, you have to remember he was brought in, but there was also a warrant for his arrest, a felony warrant for his arrest. So that was an extra layer of that. But there should be. I think there's a real conversation to be had about what happens to folks when we bring them in and go to jail. I could tell you our officers, and again, I can't show the body cam footage of it because it's body cam footage from inside the jail, but the conversations my officers with these folks, they connect with them, and it's frustrating.
But there aren't any concrete responsibilities or specific things that officers or anyone in the government is supposed to, I guess, you arrest someone for trespass and then you let them out later and that's it?
Typically, and they have a court date, they would go to court.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
How would you like to see that change if you would?
Well, I have a huge wish list. But, I think all too often the police are asked to do a lot of things. And I often say this, that when we are called, it's typically because multiple systems have failed these communities. And if you look at communities that are disproportionately affected by violent crime, or the unhoused community, you look deep, you're going to find systems that continue to fail these communities. And when those systems fail, we're left. And we're not always best suited to deal with those. But we have to answer the call. We have to show up, and we have to do our best to try to address these situations, but it's frustrating. Next question. Ma'am?
Yes, so I have a question. Being the administrator of Charlottesville First United Methodist Church.
Thank you.
This park is directly in my front yard, and I am clearly one of many of the 266 phone calls you've gotten. So, and there are many mornings when I have to go out onto our front porch, and I have to get rid of the people on the porch. Not that I want to. Several of them are my friends. We feed them every Monday on the soup kitchen. We've made relationships with them. But there are times when I have had to nudge them myself on their feet because I'm afraid to touch them with my hands, being I don't know if there's drugs involved, which there's usually a lot of drug paraphernalia up on our porch.
On your porch?
Yes. And so I've been instructed not to touch the person with my hands or anything, just to use the base of my foot and to nudge them gently awake. And if I can't get that, that's when I call you guys. I guess my question is, and being we have a preschool, that we cannot leave the church any longer because of the safety concerns. My parents are concerned. Staffing is concerned. We've had to have buddy system rules now where we work. My question is there going to be more police presence with the more tents that are coming? I watch more and more and more. I'm watching more and more drugs being done, fights. There was a fight yesterday. I'm watching this all in my front yard, so I'm wondering what I can tell my parishioners, my preschool parents. Is there just going to be a lot, will we see a lot more police presence just to kind of curb what's going on over there?
So I could tell you we are going to respond to, when we receive a call for service over there, absent just being in the park. For anything else, we will respond. And we will address those issues as we're confronted with them. And so yes, we will. Anything else? Any other questions?
So following up on the earlier questions about resources, I was wondering, we saw in that first body camera video that one of the officers asked a unhoused individual if he had been to the Salvation Army. Are there specific resources that CPD officers are instructed on or that they are supposed to recommend or could recommend?
So we have something called a street sheet, and it's got a barcode on it as well. I'm just going to be frank. I'm sorry. But I've worked in 2 other jurisdictions, the city of Alexandria and the town of Warrenton. Both had a 24-hour shelter with wraparound services, and I've never been in a jurisdiction that hasn't had either, and we don't have them.
Regarding,
we're going to,
regarding the stabbing.
I'll get one more.
Yeah, regarding the stabbing, the at or around language, that was,
Mhm.
is that your language? Is that the?
It's our language. So when we went to the hospital, that's what we were told from the person because he was kind of out of it. So at or around Market Street Park in that area.
Where it happened, actually.
That's why we're asking the public who's there, just like we would if there was a stabbing in Belmont or in West Haven, anywhere else. We would ask for people who may have seen something. And I think someone from the unhoused community deserves the same respect. All right, thank you everybody. I appreciate you coming.